Hello students, today in part 2 of an introduction to a case study as a qualitative method, we will be discussing about the different types of case studies, the important steps for designing case studies, and advantages and disadvantages of using case studies in research. Another important part of case study is its types. Though there are different types of case studies, but from broader perspective point of view, we will be dealing with only 4 types of case studies, that is illustrative, exploratory, cumulative and critical. So we will go one by one. Illustrative case studies are primarily descriptive studies because they aim to explain to the reader a particular situation, phenomenon or event, describe the problem and provide an existing solution. In other words, it provides enough details on a given topic. So, illustrative case studies serve primarily to make the unfamiliar case familiar and to give readers a common language about the topic in question. Second is exploratory. Now, these are actually condensed case studies, that is compact case studies performed before implementing a large-scale investigation. That is why it is also called a pilot case study, because its basic function is to help identify questions and choose or select types of measurement prior to the main investigation or prior to the beginning of any investigation. Third one is cumulative. Now this type serves to summarize the information collected from different sources, collected from different sites, in different periods of time. So the main objective of this method is that the collection of past studies will help or will allow for generalization, for greater generalization without additional cost or time being spent, so that the researcher can avoid spending time and cost to repeat the investigation over and over again. And the fourth one is critical. Now this method is useful for determining causes and consequences, and it mainly aims to investigate one or more sources or one or more sites to examine a situation with unique interest and with very little interest in generalizability. And it mainly aims to challenge a highly generalized or universal assertion. That is why the term critical has been used, because it challenges a highly generalized and a universal assertion. So this is a critical case study, and this method is very much useful for answering cause and effect questions. There are various important steps for designing case studies, and in this slide we will be focusing on the same. The first one is determine and define research questions. The first step in the research is to establish a firm research focus that the researcher can refer to throughout the study of a complex phenomenon or an object. Now here, the researcher establishes the focus of the study by asking questions about the situation, by asking questions about the problem being studied, and at the same time determining a purpose for the study. Now here, the object of research in a study may often be a program or an entity or a person or a group of people or an object which is likely to be very much intrinsically linked to different issues. And it may be political or social or historical or personal. Second is select cases and determine data collection and analysis techniques. Now, during the research design phase, the researcher determines which approaches will be used in the selection of single or multiple real-life cases to examine in depth, and which instruments or which approaches or which methods to data collection will be used. A case study can be a single case study or it can be a multiple cases. So when using multiple cases, each case should be treated as unique, and the conclusions of each case can then be used as information that contributes to the entire study. So the researcher must determine whether to study cases that are unique in some way or the other, or cases that is considered typical or that is considered distinctive from others. And he or she can also select cases to represent a variety of geographic regions. Third step is preparation of data collection in the case study method. Because case study research generates a huge amount of data from multiple sources, now very important point to remember here is systematic organization of data is very, very important, so that the researcher can be prevented from becoming overwhelmed or sometimes becoming confused by the amount of data, and also to prevent him from losing sight of the original goal or the central theme or the central question of the research. So that is why prepaid preparation assists in the handling of huge amount of data in a documented and systematic manner. So systematic organization of data is very much important. Fourth one is collection of data in the field. Now, the researcher must collect and store multiple sources of evidence comprehensively and at the same time systematically in formats that can be referenced and classified so that consolidated forms or convergent lines of inquiry and patterns can be discovered later. So the researcher should carefully observe the object of the case study and even identify causal factors associated with the observed phenomenon. Fifth step is to evaluate and analyze data. Now here the researcher should examine the raw data using many interpretations to find the links between the research object and the results with reference to the original research questions. And throughout the process of evaluation and analysis, the researcher should remain open to new opportunities and should remain open to new insights. The case study method, using multiple methods of data collection and analysis techniques, offers researchers the opportunity to triangulate. Now here, triangulate, the term in social sciences is usually, it means the application and combination of several research methods in the study of the same phenomenon. And the last step is to prepare the report, that is the field report. A case studies report the data in a way that transforms a complex issue into one that can be easily understood, allowing the reader to question and examine the study and come to an independent understanding of the researcher. The purpose of this written report should be to reveal or to portray a complex problem in a way that conveys the findings that conveys the experiences to the reader. So the studies present the data in a very accessible and in a very simple way to the public, which can lead the reader to apply the experience to their own actual situation also. Researchers should also pay close attention to sufficient evidence to gain the confidence of the reader that all routes have been explored, then clearly communicating the boundaries of the case and at the same time giving special attention to the contradictory statements or conflicting propositions. Now here the field report, or we can say the case study report, should contain or should include the various problems, then the research questions, then describing, it should describe the different research methods, particularly, for example, statistical techniques, cartographic techniques, such as RS and GIS techniques, tools, and even it should explain the different methods of data collection, analysis techniques used, and even the conclusions along with the answers to questions and suggestions for future research. So the key features of the report should include a feeding of specific stories related to the successes or losses experienced by the study undertaken, or by the people or a specific group or the target group, that is. Let us now focus on the benefits of using a case study for a research. First one is they are comprehensive in nature. A case study enables holistic review because they allow a lot of detail to be collected that would not normally be easily obtained by other research designs. And the data collected is normally much richer and of greater depth than can be found through other experimental designs. Second is they reduce bias. Now they give space to the diversity of perspective, as opposed to when one is using a single view of a person you get with a survey response or an interview. So this method eliminates chances of potential bias by giving an opportunity to gain a greater understanding of the subject under investigation. Another important advantage of using a case study is that it simplifies complex concepts. Fourth one is case studies expose the participants to real life situations which otherwise is difficult. Thus, the advantage of this method is its applicability to real, contemporary human situations, and as well as its public accessibility through its written reports. The results of case studies also relate directly to the everyday experience of the average reader, and at the same time, this method facilitates the understanding of complex real-life situations. Fifth advantage is it truly helps in adding value to the participants, as the case studies are an exposure of the researcher to real-life situations, as it involves participants in decision making, because the participants, meaning the target group or the respondents, they also take part in decision making through a set of questions or through open-ended discussion on concrete subjects under study. Next is it improves analytical thinking, communication, developing tolerance for different views on the same subject, it improves ability to defend one's own point of view with logic, and enhances teamwork also of the participants, making them efficient over time. Next is it's a very important advantage that case studies are very important as well as effective method when it comes to the study to be undertaken on rare cases where large samples of similar participants are not available. Exemplifying this case is the study of brain damage, because cases of brain damage are quite minimal, and it is extremely rare to find people with the exact same part of the brain being affected. So to be able to gain knowledge of brain functions, the people with the said problems have to be studied, and information need to be collected, information need to be extracted, and this is generally possible and can be done only through case studies. Now, eighth advantage is it studies a social unit in its entire perspective. So it means that there is no sampling in case study method. And the ninth advantage of case study is it helps in continuous analysis. It is valuable in analyzing continuously the life of a social unit to explore the facts. A case study has many advantages, but it is not free from various weaknesses at the same time. The first disadvantage is limited representatives. Due to a narrow focus, a case study has limited representatives, and therefore generalization is not possible. And at the same time, it is very difficult to find an appropriate case study that suits all subjects. The results of case studies cannot be generalized to the wider population, because a sample which is studied is usually very small. So because of selective subjectivity, there is a tendency to select unusual cases, and therefore generalization is very dangerous and very risky sometimes. Second is possibility of biasness. Now, it has been mentioned that though case studies reduce biasness, but sometimes it may be biased towards a single individual or group of people, because case studies contain the study of observations and perceptions of a sole person. So because of this, there are chances that the person presenting the case study may completely present it in one manner, missing other aspects completely. Further, there also tends to be only one experimenter, or sometimes only one researcher collecting the data. So this can lead to bias in data collection, and this can ultimately again in turn influence results more than any other designs or any other methods. So a researcher's own subjective feeling may influence the case study. Another important disadvantage is it is very costly and time consuming. Managing time is a difficult task in case studies, because case studies generally consume more time and is more costly when compared to other methods. This is mainly because the researcher has to be actively present in the field. He has to visit the field frequently. interacting with the respondents, interacting with the target population, interacting with the people involved in the study. So that is why it is very costly and time consuming. Next is, since it relies on self-report data, so it can be misleading. Then it does not explain behavior. So therefore it is very difficult to draw a definite cause and effect from case studies. Now another major disadvantage is any classification is not at all possible because of studying a very small unit. Then there is a possibility of errors. How possibility of errors? Because case study method may have the errors of memory and the errors of judgment. After going through the strengths and weaknesses of case studies, it can be said that the advantages of case study far outweigh its disadvantages. Because the case study approach provides for experimental learning, and they are very important and useful and at the same time effective method of data collection, especially in cases of rare phenomena. Case studies are complex and they often involve sources of data which can include multiple cases within a study and produce large amounts of data for analysis. So researchers from different disciplines can use the case study method to construct a theory, to produce a new theory, or to discuss the theory, or sometimes challenge theory, explain a situation, provide a basis for applying solutions to situations, exploring as well as describing an object or phenomenon under study. Thank you for watching.